This is the Pentair Purex 2000 series filter. I have about 10 of them on my route still, slowly replacing them with fiberglass filters. Okay, we're going to need for this job is some silicone spray or magic lube, a mask when you do the DE, high pressure nozzle, a 1-pound coffee can or a 1-pound DE scoop, and a bag of diatomaceous earth. The first thing we want to do is turn on the filter to charge it up. It's very crucial on this filter to let all the air out of it. You'll see why in a minute. Okay, all the air is out. Go over here and turn off the pump. You want to make sure the timer's not going to come back on. You can see the on trip right here. That would not be good because it could come back on and be very dangerous. So I'm going to go ahead and kill the switch here. And you see I killed it, so it's not going to come back on. Okay, we'll want to remove this knob. It should be hand tight. Okay, we'll get that off. And I wear an apron. I've learned over the years not to lose parts by putting them in my apron pockets. Make sure you put it somewhere you don't lose it. We'll take this clamp off. Okay, now the only way to really get this lid off is to blow it off with the pressure from the pool. And you could put your hand here to hold it, to brace it when it comes off. It's not going to be dangerous at all since the clamp is off. And I'll just pressurize it right now and you'll see it pop right off. There it goes. You can hold it to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. You want to tilt it over and turn everything off. And then the backwash on this one is at the bottom, just like the 4000 series. I'm going to go ahead and move the rotator valve. And it should move fairly easily. I'm going to use my foot. It seems to be a little bit stuck. Okay, I got that all the way open. See the water coming out. And this valve fails over time. There's a brass component in it and an O-ring. And when that fails, it won't move. And I'll show you at the end of the video how to clean a filter when that's not working. It's really not worth replacing. The cost of replacing it is about $300 or $400. At that point, you might as well get a new filter. Okay, we're going to go ahead and take off the bolt here, holding it on, the nut. And you'll see an air bleeder. This one actually is broken off, and it's not really working, but you may have a screen on top of yours. Be careful you don't lose that. We'll just take the top manifold off, and we're going to remove the grids. Now sometimes they'll get compacted with DE and they'll be tough to pull out. Like right here, these have a lot of earth on them, but they should pull out pretty easily. Try not to snap them when you pull them. Just keep working on it and wiggling it until it does come out. And eventually will pull out. The last thing you want to do is snap the grid inside the bottom manifold. It's a little bit hard to get out. Okay, we're going to hose off inside of here also. I got all the grids out. I'm going to go rinse them off. And I prefer rinsing them off in the grass. It does no harm to the grass. And that way the Z can be easily absorbed and you won't leave a mess. You want to take a high pressure hose the grids off good. You want to turn it over and do the same to the other side. And we'll do this to all 8 grids. I'm going to carefully inspect the grids. Usually they'll tear right here on the spine, or they'll tear in the corners here. And I'll do this to all 8 of the grids. I'm going to hose the bottom off, and you want to be careful not to get any earth inside the manifold itself. That'll go right back in the pool. So I'm going to carefully hose it off, keeping anything from going into the manifold. I use a low spray of water, that way it won't splash anything in there. It's the exact same design as the 4000 series. You'll see a notch inside the manifold. If you look at the grid itself, there's actually a notch right there. So that sits right in there inside the notch. I'll show you right now how that goes. So there's the notch, and I'm going to go ahead and put the filter grid in there. It'll sit in there, and you'll feel it actually go in there snug. If it's not in there snug, it'll pop out when the system comes on and leak earth. So you want to make sure the notch goes right inside there. Again, there's the notch. And I'm going to go ahead and slide it in so that it goes into the notch in the manifold. Just like that. Then we're going to slowly build the pattern right around, putting it back in this direction. And that should be the pattern you have once you put them all in. This takes a little practice getting the top manifold on. But once you do it a few times, you can know how to do it. You just slide it around until the grids fall between the notches. It might take a bit of work, but you want it flush right against all the grids, all the way around. And that's good. I'm going to put the bolt on top, the nut. There's usually a washer here, but that's fallen off. I'm going to go ahead and put it on the opposite direction. That way I don't drop it in there. I've dropped a few in there, putting it on the other way, and have to take everything apart to get the nut out. You want to make sure it's good and tight. That's not going to go anywhere. Okay, I'm going to close the backwash valve. Now here's the hardest part, getting the lid back on, but there's actually a trick that works really well. You want to lube up the O-ring really well. If the O-ring is worn, the lid won't go back on very easily. It's a red line O-ring. I'll give you the part number in the comments section. Make sure you clean that pump basket out before you put the earth in there. And here's a 2000 series filter with the warning label still intact, hasn't worn out with the elements. And basically, if this thing were to come on while you're clamping this lid on, it could cause a fatality with the pressure from the water. You want to definitely make sure the system's not going to come back on while you're doing this. The magic lube or the silicone spray. You don't want to use WD-40, that will degrade the O-ring very quickly. And you have to be really generous with this particular filter. What we're going to do is we're going to turn on the filter with the lid off. Let it fill with water. You're going to grab the lid and you're going to set it right here like this. Okay, now water's pouring out, we turn it off. You want to carefully push it down over the O-ring at this point and let the water going back down pull the lid back on. You can actually hear the air as it's receding. It may be a little difficult at first, but you can get it on there. Try this section here. And just keep working the O-ring. Sometimes this goes on really easily, sometimes not. Okay, so this one's not going on. I'm going to go ahead and change the O-ring. That's the only solution. And pop the old O-ring off. And this is called a red line O-ring because there's actually a red line in the O-ring. Okay, I put the new one on. I'm going to go ahead and spray it up again. This will definitely do the trick. Water coming in. I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. And I'm going to press it on now. So again, just keep working it, keep massaging the O-ring underneath the top of the lid. And eventually will slide down once you get enough of that O-ring underneath there. Again, this is the hardest part of this particular filter. And there it goes. Just slid down. That takes a little bit of effort, and again you have to change the O-ring often on these because of that reason. And I think this lid is slightly warped. It's pretty old. Okay, then we get the clamp back on and make sure we tighten this really good. And these filters can be a pain because of that lid. And there'll be a gap right there with this particular clamp. That should be fine. Just make sure you have it all the way tight. Okay, we're going to turn everything on. Let's let the air out of here also. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and charge up the filter with the 48 square foot filter. So I'm going to put 8 1-pound cans in. What I like to do is put the first can in and then look at the return line to make sure nothing is leaking out. And here's the return line, and there's no earth coming back out, so that means that the filter has no leaks. And I can put the rest of the earth in. You want to make sure that you wait for that to dissolve before you put the next scoop in. Otherwise you could clog the pump basket. And I put 8 scoops in there. If this was a 60 square foot, I would have put 10 scoops, and if it was a 36 square foot, I would have put 6. And that's how you clean a 2000 series filter and get that pesky lid back on there. Here's a very old 2000 series filter, and the rotator valve on the bottom is no longer working. So I'm going to show you how I clean it without having the backwash valve operating. Okay, we want to turn on the filter, charge it up. Let's let the air out of the bleeder. It's very important on these filters to do this process. Okay, so we know it's fully charged with water. Okay, you want to get the clamp off fairly quickly before the water evacuates the filter. We'll get that clamp off. Okay, we're going to turn on. We're going to hold the lid, push it off to the side. Since this filter has no backwash valve, I'm going to let the water drain back down through the pipes. And once the water reaches the bottom of the filter, I'm going to go ahead and pull these grids out. It may take a couple minutes. And the water has receded past the bottom manifold, so now we can take these grids out safely without water going back into the system. So your goal in this case is to pull the grids out with most of the earth intact on it without it falling into the filter, since you can't backwash it. So just be careful we get them out without having a lot of the E falling into the filter bottom. And now what I'm going to do is carefully break up the DE in here, keeping it below the bottom manifold here. Just break it up. That way I can flush it out. I'll show you how I do that right now. After I get the grids back in. And that's pretty good. As long as the water stays below that manifold, you can get the grids on without too much earth going back in. And I'll show you how I flush that right now. Okay, once we have everything back together, what we're going to do is turn on the system. We're going to leave the lid off. We're going to let all that dirty water kind of run itself out at the top of the filter. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and get the lid back on. And that's how you do the filter when the backwash valve is not working.